Well, I'm happy to be able to kill two birds with one stone in today's discussion because this week, precious metals expert Miike Maloney is releasing a brand new book, The Great Gold and Silver Rush of the 21st Century, and I've just finished reading my advanced copy. It's extremely well written and researched, and I'm going to ask Miike to delve into several of its most important insights. Miike, congrats on the launch of a great book.
Thanks, Adam.
So, starting out, just in chapter one, you talk about the supreme importance of understanding the difference between money versus currency. And I want to pull one of your quotes here. Actually, two quotes you put in here, one from you, one from a very wise person in history. The first one is that money must store value, currency does not. So I'm going to let you explain that, but I will give the other quote too here, which is the beginning of wisdom is to call things by their proper name. And that's an old saying by Confucius, right? So age-old pearls of wisdom there. And I think that's why it's so important to you to get the terminology right here, because if we're not speaking accurately, then we don't have a good understanding.
Right. And, I started this with my first book, actually stage appearances. I started differentiating between national fiat currencies and money because everybody agrees. I mean, even you go on the Federal Reserve's website and you look for the attributes of what is money. What does money have to be? And the very first thing is a store of value. And after that, they go medium of exchange, unit of account, and all these other things, fungible and divisible and all that other stuff. And so if it's in the book, I came up with a couple of questions that you can ask somebody. If somebody is insisting, no, you're wrong, the euro is money. No, you're wrong, the dollar is money. Ask them, does money have to be a store of value? Is that one of its attributes? And if they say yes, ask them, is there inflation? And if they say yes, then ask them, aren't those two things mutually exclusive? Mm-hmm. If there is inflation, it is not storing value. And current national fiat currencies, all of them on this planet now, are borrowed into existence and they're owed back plus interest. But the currency to pay the interest doesn't exist yet. It wasn't borrowed into existence. When it is borrowed into existence, you owe interest on that. So if you start off with $1 and you're going to owe that plus $1 worth of interest, and then you borrow the second dollar to pay that interest eventually, now there's $2 in existence. One is disappearing into the debt payment, but now you've got $4. There's $2 of interest and $2 of debt, and $1 is vanishing to pay off the principal on the first loan. But it doesn't, we never borrow the currency into existence. There's always more loans than there are, whenever you borrow currency into existence, whether it's from a bank or whether it's the central bank doing it, the currency appears as a double entry bookkeeping thing. There's a debt and a credit, and these two things. When you make payments, you're extinguishing the debt that is owed on that balance sheet with the currency that you save up. And so the principal vanishes, but the interest is still owed. And so in our society, loans, there are constantly more loans being made than there are paid. But what does that
every
mean?
day? Every day we have it.
Exactly. And so if you're talking about M2 currency supply, you're talking about 90% bank credit. And so you go out and find a house that you want to buy. You need $1 million loan. The bank says, okay, here's the loan document you have to agree to. They just check you out and see if they think you can repay it. And if they think so, then here's the loan document. Your signature hits that paper. They imagine $1 million into existence. We're going to loan you $1 million on that house. They imagine that into existence, type it into your checking account. And at the same time, there is a debt owed to the bank on that loan. And so this brand new imagined currency just appears. And when you make the payments on the principal, it vanishes. However, you then have to save up some of the existing pool of currency that is always being borrowed into existence and pay the interest, which is the bank's profit and pays all of the employees and pays for the building and everything else. And it goes out and it circulates. But the point is, those dollars that you're paying with, they were borrowed into existence. They're somebody else's principal that was borrowed into existence. It's just in the currency pool. It's the more you dig into the monetary system, the more you figure out that this is just such an illusion. It is just, it's amazing. And it's really important right now for everybody to start learning this stuff, because we're about to go through some enormous changes in just the next few years. This decade is going to see some upheavals in the monetary system. And if you read the book, I do believe that gold and silver are going to be the big winners in all of this.
When you talk about modern fiat currency, you sort of mentioned this, but I want to make it really clear for people. There's really sort of two components to it. There's what's called base currency, and then there's what's called bank credit currency. And why don't you define base currency real quickly for people, and then I want to talk a little bit more about bank credit currency.
Okay, there's two forms of base currency. The first is the paper notes that are in your wallet, and that is an IOU from the Federal Reserve if you live in the United States, the ECB if you're in Europe, Bank of England if you're in England. So the paper notes are one form of base currency, and they used to be the vast majority of base currency. But then with quantitative easing, Ben Bernanke, because of the mechanics of the way quantitative easing works, base currency sort of gets trapped in this second form of the base currency, which is bank reserves. Bank reserves are a dollar that the public never sees, touches, or interacts with. It is something that is only used for interbank settlement and interbank loans. So they're borrowing and lending to one another. And then when, if I pay you and I write a check to you and you go and cash that check, your bank is going to contact my bank and tell them that you've got a check from me, and they'll make $1,000 worth of the imagined bank credit currency digits, these dollars that are just digits, which the Bank of England actually states, and it's in the book, that these digits are reminders that the bank owes you an IOU. They aren't even an IOU. The bank owes you the paper note IOUs, the base currency IOUs the public uses. So there's about $2 trillion worth of base currency IOUs that we use in circulation, paper notes. The banks use that for just interbank settlement. The vast majority of the currency supply, about 90% of M2, is bank credit currency. So these are, like I said, digits in your bank account that remind the bank that it owes you that many central bank IOUs. This is all in Chapter 4. And Chapter 4, by the way, is a free download at ggsr21.com. So there's 2 chapters. Read Chapter 3 first for your viewers. Chapter 3 is much more friendly and easy to read. The reason Chapter 4 is online is because it is the hardest one to understand, and I need to be able to go back and change it as people help me figure out better ways of phrasing this.
That's one thing about the book I do want to applaud you on, which is, I know part of it might have come from necessity that the data was changing in real time as you were writing the book. But to have these online chapters where you can continue to update the charts and the data there, so that at any time somebody wants to see the latest data, they can go there. That's actually really valuable and really compelling. And I also just want to commend you too, like this is a paperback book, but it's the highest quality paperback book I've ever held. I mean, it's got a really nice heft and paperweight to it and whatnot, but more importantly, and I hope people can see this, it's filled with a lot of color. So like, here's an example. I don't know if folks can really see closely, but you got a lot of helpful visuals in here. These are actual bank notes, and you show sort of the evolution of how currency in the US, the paper currency used to be a direct claim on real money, right? You could bring the piece of paper to the gold window and get gold or silver in return for it. Now, of course, it's purely fiat. It's only backed by your trust in the U.S. government and its agencies. But these visuals are just
it's
actually super useful.
It's actually backed by your future taxation.
Yeah, that's right.
Or your house payments and your car payments. So, like I said, the bank imagines $1 million, that you bring them a piece of collateral. I want to buy this house. This is my collateral. And they imagine $1 million into existence, and they own the house until you make that final payment. You don't own it. You call yourself a homeowner, but you're not until you make that final payment. And as you're paying, the currency vanishes. Gold didn't do that. Now, when we used gold, which was money, the amount of work that it takes to prospect and find a claim, and then build a mine that ore, refine the ore, pour the refined gold into bars, and then melt those bars and mint coins. The amount of work that equals would equal about the amount of work that it would take you to do to earn those coins, which would also equal the amount of work that it took to create all the materials and to build that house. It's a fair trade of something for something. Today's fiat currency is a trade of nothing for something, which is a fraud. And they're inventing digits that are reminders to pay IOUs. And when they do, it dilutes the IOU supply that is out there, the M2 IOU supply, and thereby steals purchasing power from all the existing units of currency. We saw that in the stock market with QE, but now a lot of that is bleeding out in the inflation. They don't measure. There's something I came up with a long time ago called CUP inflation, CUPP, currency units per person. And nothing else really matters in the long run. If the CPI also included the stock market, real estate, and so on, then they would get an accurate measure of inflation that reflected the growth of the currency supply. Because there is one truth: every dollar created has to go somewhere.